Okay, and hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining to another technical MicroProfile call. So let me go and share the agenda for today. Okay, so can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so going for this first agenda topic. So Emily, you want to talk a little bit about MicroProfile 4.1? Do you want to give us a final update on that?
Yeah, finally all done. I think yeah, it's great. It's kudos to Ryan from Tommy Tribe, get MicroProfile.io updated, and also he got the blog. I started with MicroProfile.40 published as well. So that's kind of all done. And the previously in the previous releases and etc. The Decatur Jakarta annotations was missing from the picture. Now it's being finally being added. So Roberto, can you click the link MicroProfile.io?
Yeah, give me a sec.
Just properly acknowledge the dependency on the Jakarta annotation 1.3 annotations. Yeah, so that's kind of everything up to date. If anybody found anything kind of missing on etc., I think there is GitHub issue on the MicroProfile-marketing. Yeah, so it's
okay, these will okay. Usually always check this one because I know this one also sometimes is not updated, but that's fine.
Yeah, so I updated this. The interesting bit is the color on this slide is opposite to the color on the MicroProfile.io. So just make people twist your brain a bit. Yeah, so that's kind of we draw close on the 4.1. That's pretty much on 4.1, Roberto.
Okay, so we don't have anything else, right?
Yeah, so 4.1 is everything is completed. So it's draw close on the
okay. I do have like one thing that I want to bring for 4.1. Maybe this is I'm not sure if this is too much specific, but since this is a technical call, I think this is like a proper place to discuss this. So I was working to make a platform TCK run of Quarkus, and then I found out something interesting on the MicroProfile config TCK, which is we have a test which is called custom converter test, which basically overrides the converters for strings and ints and longs and things like that. So basically what the converter does is when basically you have to convert an integer or a long, it just blindly returns 999, something like this. Well, the issue is on Quarkus, we actually use MicroProfile config to configure the server itself, right? So the issue that we're experiencing is, well, I'm able to work around on that, but the issue is usually we are not able to run that test properly because it just wrecks the entire Quarkus configuration because of these converters returning values that the server is not really expecting, right? So for instance, if we have a configuration on the HTTP port, right, then you get the 999 HTTP port, which is inconvenient. So I'm thinking that we may have to turn that TCK test as an optional or exclude it somehow. Now, I'm not exactly sure how that will deal with, so on our end, technically that's completely fine, but of course, then that will not work out to make CCR for Quarkus and MicroProfile 4.1, right? So is there a chance that we can do like a service release of MicroProfile config and make that TCK test optional?
So question, and I'm sorry because I sometimes get mixed up between Jakarta EE and MicroProfile.
Yeah.
But don't we have the mechanism to challenge the tests for the TCK?
I mean, I don't think we do have it. I mean, we usually the challenge is to open just an issue on that, right? But I don't think we ever made well, an official challenge process for that. If I'm wrong, please someone correct me. If someone knows if there is a specific process to follow on the TCK challenge. I know there is one for Jakarta E, right?
Yeah,
But
I know, and that's where I'm getting
Right.
confused. But you know, normally that's let's just talk generically, just from a process standpoint. The way that I would expect it to work is that you're hitting an issue running the TCK, so you should open an issue related to that, a challenge, and then allowing the team to evaluate that to determine, okay, is there a viable workaround, or does that test need to be excluded? And you know, so then that would be the normal process to go through that. But I don't know if we have defined that process for MicroProfile or not.
I don't think we have, so that's probably an extra thing that we need to do as well.
Is there
Yeah,
anything wrong with following that process? It seems reasonable.
Yeah, I think following the like a Jakarta challenging process is makes sense. Maybe I think that's true. We haven't put this process in place because this is the first time we define a compatible implementation criteria. I think that's a natural fit to refine the challenging process.
Now,
I think, I mean, in the past, I think everything was also always done like in an informal way, right? So an issue was opened on the specific GitHub repository for the spec, and then some discussion happened, and then it was go either way. If that's enough, I'm fine with that. But
I think it's important is to standardize the process. I think is one thing is with the challenging process, you can certify against a spec quicker, because with open issue and then release another version, it will obviously take some time. And sometimes the easy fix, sometimes it might be more complicated.
Yeah, we have covered the similar, also an issue with one of the TCK tests in MicroProfile REST, that it was doing something wrong. So yeah, we opened there a ticket and a PR, but of course, that test will also not be passing correctly within the 4.1.
But REST client, has no other changes. Do you mean that the recent REST client maintenance that release has some TCK changes?
No, I think it was already there for a long time, but now we covered it by looking in the deeper that actually the TCK test itself is wrong and not doing what it should do. So yes, right. I think it's a good idea to have some kind of possibility to challenge tests and that you can get a test excluded for the CCR.
Right, yeah. So Kevin, where's the Jakarta EE challenging process? That written or kind of somewhere?
Yeah, definitely is written down. We have it in the TCK process. And so I can find that.
Each user guide also has the process.
Yeah.
so
We
is
can
that
dredge it
something?
up. We can dredge it up. And who's the right group to work that should be working on this? Is that this group?
I think it's important to put on the Google group and start a conversation, and then it's kind of refine basically it's refine the sentences and etc. Maybe we can adopt as it is in the Jakarta. I think we need to go through the working group vote, do we?
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we start or can we use the Jakarta TCK challenge process as a basis and go from there and adjust it if necessary?
Yeah, I think it's worth to bring a discussion on the mailing list, and then we can start a vote straight away within a few days.
Do we need to hang him? Do we need to delay? We don't have a process. We have done this in the past. It's just been informal. Do we have to delay his process here while we work out the details? Can we just say file an issue if the spec committer group says you're right? They release a new TCK and then you follow that and then you certify with that. Is that, could they work? Could they get through this without waiting for us to define the process? That's really what I'm,
Do it.
I think it's fine.
Same time.
I'm okay with that. I don't know what other people think.
I think it's yeah, it sounds reasonable. Just send a message to the group, basically working on the formal process, but in the meanwhile, use this parser process.
Kevin, do you mind sending the email with oh, there you go. That's the link. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I put it in the chat and then I saw that we were updating the minutes, so I just popped it in.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so here we go. Define challenges. Okay. Yeah, so I can definitely send an email and to kick up the process, and in parallel we can do we can skip the informal process of opening the issues on the relevant specs and go from there. I think that's okay if everyone agrees on that as well.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm wondering whether I think maybe it's kind of in the MicroProfile dash working group open an issue, and then like basically it's a document like define the challenge process, but in the meanwhile these are the past challenges. So basically it's we have all the record.
Well, that okay, so here again, this is what we do with Jakarta EE, but the challenges are actually created against the component that owns the TCK. So I don't think we'd open it against the working group.
The spec, it's they're supposed to be created against the spec.
Right.
Yes.
What I'm saying is kind of use the MicroProfile dash working group to track we are defining the TCK process.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and
right.
also in the meanwhile, like we use the kind of the lightweight process opening these issues.
Well, you can probably also open the issues and link them to the CCR, right?
Yeah,
if you open a CCR with your platform or individual implementation, then you can link to the TCK challenge and say, hey, I'm passing all these tests except for this one for this whatever reason, and here is the challenge, right?
Ideally, the spec group will bless your say yes to your acceptance, because at least in my impression, you want to give the spec team a chance to say, no, that's what we meant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I doubt that's the case in what you're describing, but they need to be.
Well, I was saying that, for instance, if you have like a statement of the team saying, yes, this is an issue.
Yes.
And then comment on the issue that you open and say, we'll fix it, then you can link them to the CCR saying, okay, the spec team acknowledged that this is a problem, so we can ignore this test for the CCR. Is that okay, or is that correct?
I think that link with the issue is a good idea. So basically, when you file the compatible implementation issue and the link to your challenge is good.
In Jakarta, we'd prefer that the TCK get re-released with that test excluded, or something that has addressed the challenge.
Okay.
Right. But that's Jakarta. I'm not saying that we have to follow that here.
No, sure. I was just asking if I mean I'm totally fine with either approach, right?
At the end of the day, you want someone. If there was a question, you'd like to have enough evidence so that it could be whatever you tested against could be reproduced. If by nobody else but you, right? So, at least that's the thinking for the Jakarta side.
I think it's a good idea for MicroProfile too. It's a patch release of the TCK, right? Because it behaves differently and got fixed, or some tests got excluded. So
yeah, if you look at the TCK, if you look at the spec pages for Jakarta, you'll see lots of specs. Well, some specs have multiple TCKs, and in some cases that's because they've excluded a test that was challenged.
Yeah, so there's a few solutions. One is exclude the TCK or update the TCK, right? So is it either is an option or there's some criteria you need to exclude the TCK. I thought is before the TCK is fixed, you have the option to exclude the TCK. But if the TCK was fixed and released, you need to rerun your implementation against the released TCK. Or am I wrong?
So you don't want to create a situation where you force people who've already passed the test to go back and retest. And you also don't want to create a situation where somebody who has passed the test suddenly finds that they can't pass the test now. And I'm not saying that what the example we're talking about would do that. So what in the case where the spec team decides it wants to actually change the TCK in Jakarta EE, they created a mechanism where they could create an alternate test, and then it's up to the implementation to decide, do I want to run the original test or this alternate test, right? And that's different from excluding. In practice, almost always we would just exclude tests.
Yeah, that's what my impression as well.
In the past, we have released TCKs with updates.
Right, but it's always as an alternate.
No, I mean on the MicroProfile side of the fence, we have introduced, we have released fixed TCKs. We have fixed tests and point releases.
So then MicroProfile might not want to adopt those rules as or that practice as.
Right. So it's basically I think it's as Ed pointed out, for some runtime already certified already. So we shouldn't force them to recertify because we cannot, fixed one TCK or updated one TCK, right?
Then it definitely it needs a different version number, a patch release in that case. So you can show the proof.
Yeah.
If you exclude only one test, then that's the question. But from my opinion, the test behaves differently. So the result is different, hopefully. So that's a good reason to have a patch release too.
And not only that, I think the good reason for it is that you never, so this will solve if you go and exclude the test, right? So apparently, like, you're just excluding a test. So if you're running in the same TCK, it should be fine. But then there are other occasions that may not work, right? So then you're not going to have a consistency approach to the problem, right? So in where we have a situation where you just exclude a test, and a situation where you are forced to have a release because you have to change whatever piece on the code. So if you just keep it consistent and do a patch release all the time, then there is no question about what needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So the further on question is for the TCK process. So it's I think this will be when we define the TCK process. So where the TCK process will be documented? Will be in the MicroProfile.io or will be in the working group wiki? The reason I'm asking is that we need to open an issue to track it. So that's the previous I brought up whether to open an issue on the MicroProfile working group.
Yes.
Or right, okay.
Yeah, we should open the issue there. And you do want to have it in a, an eventual read-only location. So
Right.
if you put it on a wiki, that's too easy to update.
Yeah, no revision tracking either.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, what I mean in the MicroProfile working group as a kind of checked in, so it's version controlled.
Yeah, that's what repo was for, is for us
Yeah.
to put all of our documents so that we could track them.
Okay. So okay, I will add this open issue there.
But they could be put on the website. Wouldn't be technically impossible to have them published from the repo even, but we don't have that set up currently.
Could we create a specifications folder in that repo where stuff like this could live?
You mean in the GitHub repo, we create another folder? I think that's a good idea.
Oh, I mean, you're talking about having
I'm just
basically
trying to make a common place. Instead, I mean, I don't know the details of the repo, so it could all be flat. Maybe that's what you want. You could create a specifications directory where all things like this go.
I think so far all thing we have in there is the charter and
so that's the one right now.
Yeah, the MicroProfile specification process.
Right.
So I mean, if we're just going to create a TCK guide, we might as well just throw it in there as right there at the top level, but we certainly can reorg it over time if it gets to be a little.
So you're to start making links to this, and you move those around and you start breaking a bunch of old links. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever works.
Okay, so I think we have a plan. Let's move into that direction and see where we go.
So just to follow up, so do we need a TCK process?
Yes, a team. Well, we need a TCK.
Somebody who's going to write it out and sort of take the pen and.
So my understanding was to start with the Jakarta one. We can send it to the list, and then we can review it and see if there requires any changes, and then we can probably the easiest way to do it is actually we can pick up the current document for Jakarta and open a PR to the working group as a new document, and then people can review it in the PR. Does that work?
Are you volunteering to write it? I mean, I was trying to see if there was a group of people that were interested, or if it should.
Well, I mean, if there is already like a basis on that on Jakarta, I don't think we need to write any document. We just need to make it. We just either adopt it as is or make any changes. At least that's my view. But if someone, at least I don't want to have the work to rewrite it from scratch. So, but if someone wants to do it, please be my guest.
I wrote a lot of that document for Jakarta, so I mean it's very applicable to what we want to do. The one part that we would probably, there is one part at least that we would definitely want to change, and that is in the Jakarta side of the fence. We have an explicit note that tests cannot be basically fixed between patch releases, right? where we do fix them on MicroProfile, or at least that's what has been the practice for the last 5 years. We may not keep that practice, but that's what we've been doing. So, you know, we would make that note. But other than that, I think it's pretty applicable.
So maybe
Okay.
there's just a short note that says we adopt the Jakarta EE TCK process with the following exceptions, you know, and just list them. I mean, maybe that's a starting point. And then we
Could be.
run that past the, I guess what, the steering committee? Is that right? I don't know.
Could be.
Yeah, I think it's good to bring in the Jakarta TCK as the first PR, and then people commented, and then David will add, if you are not, and then add another commit or something to update it, and then we just work on that, and then once we are happy, and then put on the vote.
Works for me.
Okay, so let's move into that direction. I can probably open the PRs. It shouldn't be like a big deal, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to open the PR since I wrote a lot of that doc. So,
Well, I mean, if you want to do it, that's fine.
sure.
I'm not gonna.
You know, I'll let people comment and stuff like that. And we can all
Sure.
resolve together. But
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, David.
Okay, MicroProfile 4.0. Emily, do you want to tell us something about this?
Yeah, so it's a 5.0. I think most specs are making great progress. I also is a couple of spec hasn't made much progress. I talked with them, and apparently they're waiting for the dependencies to make a move. So Roberto, if you click on the sequence and etc., the doc. So basically, it's right now config did a kind of RC release. And then it's kind of we should encourage health and also metrics to make a move to do like a M1 or RC1 for their release, and then the rest will fall into places. One thing is I observed is I think there's a kind of discussion on the metrics. So like when it's talking about adopting MicroProfile parent. So there's the kind of or the format change. So people have concerns with so many files, kind of or the species changed and also the indentation changed, etc. So there's a kind of reservation regarding the adopting MicroProfile parent. However, I do think adopting the MicroProfile parent has a great advantage for this like the Jakarta E9 alignment. So it's I don't have any particular kind of concerns regarding all these kind of massive file changes regarding the species and also the indentation and etc.
Well, one of the issues was that so I did the parent work, and when I was doing the parent work, one of the issues that every single spec, every single project have their own way of code styling, right? So I know that we don't release like a full jar with all the APIs bundled together, but still it looked weird for me that when I was working in like different MicroProfile specs or APIs, they will follow different code styles, right? For me, doesn't make any sense. So on the parent, we try to make that consistent. And of course, this is going to bring differences on the code styling when you apply the parent and then the parent starts to doing the formatting. But on the other hand, it's going to make all the APIs follow the same code style, which I think it's better. And since we're doing the Jakarta rename, I think it's okay to do those all those code style changes. I mean, they're not going to break the API in any way, right? But as you say, it's just things like spaces or some formatting things, but at least you're going to become consistent. Another thing is, if you remember, we had to do like crazy configurations around all the projects for the releases, right? Because of the headers, because of the dates, right? And all of that is already put on the parent, so you don't have to go and do all that configuration to be able to release the projects with the right headers or with the right dates and with the right licenses.
Yeah, I'm completely.
So I think that using the parent is not, it is not like optional. It should be mandatory.
Yeah, that's my take as well. So that's why it's on one of the checklist. So I noticed the rest of the client didn't use that in their M1. So I think I'll continue. I think we should continue pushing towards the spec to adopt a parent. The other advantage with adopting parent, we can control the dependencies on the like versions and etc. Otherwise, the different spec pull in different dependency with the different versions and etc. With the same dependency with the different versions. So I think is like for the maybe it's the kind of the next week or this week will be push health and metrics to do either M1 release or the or RC release. Just move forward for the go to the phase 2 so that you can do M1 or release or RC release. The other thing I want to bring up is I figured out when trying to help out with metric with the Open API. I think is apparently there was the kind of there was a MR release instead of MX or RCX. So that's kind of messed up with some plugins. So it's I think it's we also need to pay particular attention to the Maven naming convention. We do MX or RCX.
Well, you can probably do this by changing the job on Jenkins. So instead of you having to type the version, you just do a checkbox and then it will append the right suffix.
You mean the doing the when you do as Jenkins add another checkbox? Is whether
yeah, because right now you have to type in the version manually, right? So if you want, you can type CR or RC or MR or ML, whatever you want. So if you put it as like a fixed list or like a checkbox or whatever, then at least it will become a little more consistent. Even though people will can still make mistakes, but at least it will narrow down the possibilities to do to put it on the name.
That's a great idea, Roberto. Yeah, so that's good. Do you who want to volunteer to do it?
We had a team to work on the infrastructure and the releases, I believe, or we have at least some people that wanted to work on that.
I know Martin has done something before. I don't know. I don't want to put a Martin on the spot.
Well, what do you mean? Well, I have OpenPR in the spec, but I have quite some issues running the TCK in small rack because we are using Wi-Fi Arculian adapter, which is not quite yet ready for Jakarta namespace.
So Martin, we are discussing the in the Jenkins job, adding another checkbox. basically you can do check to see you want to do a milestone radius or radius candidate. Is that easy thing to do? I haven't done this before.
Yeah, well, me too, but I think that should be doable. At least there should be some kind of Dropbox option or something like this. Definitely, I can take a look tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you, Martin.
Okay.
Emily, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry.
In that chart you were showing, did it really say there was a dependency on EJB and JWT?
Where?
This is for JOT, right? It's because of
That job. Yeah.
There is integration for the roles allows and AJBs, I believe.
Yes.
There are several integrations in MicroProfile JWT. So, you know, there's one for, as mentioned, roles allowed. I'm trying to remember what, you know, which was at the time only in the EJB spec. Now it's, you know, like when I say only in the EJB spec, I mean it was only used by the EJB spec despite the fact that it was in the
I just
Java
can't,
X
that's
annotation
sort of
package.
blowing my mind. I'm sorry, because EJB is such a Hydra spec in Jakarta. I don't know how that would work for somebody who's trying to use MicroProfile.
But it's an optional one, if I'm correct. So you don't need to provide those integrations. So
yeah,
I think that's the relevant piece over here.
Yeah.
So that would only work if you were using a full a full platform.
Yeah,
Right.
Both Jakarta and MicroProfile platform. Yes, or container.
Yeah. So there, here are all the security related calls that are detailed as if your security came in via JWT and you have a MicroProfile implementation, these things could work. So if you call get color principal on the EJB session context, if you call is color and role on the EJB session context, there are equivalent calls in the servlet specification. So get user principal and HTTP request is user and role and request, HTTP servlet request. Then there's the Jack calls to get the subject. And then the most recent Java EE security or Jakarta security specification added additional ways to get the subject and principal. And so those could be supported even though you may be authenticated via JWT. So basically it was this part of the specification is how would all the existing Jakarta EE security calls work if the incoming credential was a JWT.
So there must not be a TCK test that verifies this. Otherwise, you'd have to haul in a whole implementation.
There are tests for them, but they're all optional.
So
yeah. So I don't really know if, who's passing them and who's not, because we don't. Just like on the Jakarta side of the fence, we don't really document that.
As far as I remember, there is like an optional suite of tests for those pieces.
Yep, that's
for
what it
DGB
said.
integration.
Yep, there are tests. They're optional. I don't know who's passing them and who's not, because we don't document that.
All right.
But Emily, we don't. I mean, there is a dependency here, but we don't really require anything on HTTP because that's already releases, right?
We in the TCK we need to get a EJB though.
Sure, but we don't. I mean, it is a dependency, but we don't need anything happening over there, because that's already, I mean, we're operating for Jakarta 9 and that's what's already released. So it's just like a simple dependency. There is no, there is no waiting
No
on that,
no
right?
waiting. So basically the JWT basically wait for config. That's as simple as that. So that's why it's on the phase 2. So config is kind of need to happen first. So basically what I'm trying to say, JWT can release now.
Sure. So can we just, I mean, I understand this, but can we just remove this so it becomes a little more clear? I mean, it is a dependency, but it's not like a dependency to the release process.
Yeah, correct. You can move to the, maybe add another column. So basically it's a dependency on the Jakarta specs.
Okay, give me a sec. Not sure why this is super slow, but okay.
Yeah, you should
there you go.
update that as well. If it's going to be there, it should be complete. So you need to add servlets and Jack. JACC. Or yeah.
I'm sorry, give me. I'm not sure why like it's like super slow. I'm not sure if it's, I think it was because of the Zoom that I was doing. It was just like. Okay, there you go. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's JACC.
JACC.
Can you prefix with the TCK? So
authorization. Jakarta. We should try to use the.
Yeah. Can you just
Jakarta
say
authorization?
Yeah. Also prefix TCK. Otherwise, people will think, okay, as maybe API depend on them.
Can you put the link in there
Which link?
of the document?
It's already on the minutes, David.
Okay. Oh, you're saying this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is right here.
I put it in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay, do we have anything else on the Jakarta, sorry, on the MicroProfile 5?
No, nothing from me.
Okay, so let's do the last 15 minutes on the last topic, which is the process of creating new MicroProfile specs. These, if you don't remember, this was like a discussion that we had a few meetings ago, and it started, I believe, around the work or the adoption that we wanted to do on open telemetry, and then also expanded for other things like gRPC. We realized that we don't really have like a clear process on how to create these new MicroProfile specifications. So Emily did make a proposal or wrote a proposal on how this could work. So let me open that up here. So the idea is to try to discuss this a little bit and see if we can move forward and ratify this proposal. Emily, do you want to start? I mean, you wrote this, so is there anything that you want to summarize on your proposal? Maybe you can highlight some of the differences that we had from the informal process that we had before and the one that you're proposing here.
Right. Okay. So if like up to now, actually, it's prior to the working group was set up. So basically, we discuss new ideas on the mailing list. And then if everybody think it's a great idea, let's go ahead to do it. Nobody could challenge the questions. And I think in the past, a few spec and directly create the repo and people collaborate in the repo and then release a specification. And but it happen more often is or I mean there's more different ideas and more different thinking And then we came up like evolve the process, like we create a MicroProfile dash sandbox. So basically people can demonstrate their idea in the sandbox. Basically this sandbox repo, you can go ahead to merge. You don't need a review, and then you can merge your idea. This is basically a repository. You can demonstrate your idea in a readable format. And then is people like can view this your idea. And then is if like there's no challenge and etc. Again, it's a kind of repo, dedicated repo will be was created, and then start the specification work. So in the what's happening in the MicroProfile dash sandbox, it can be as simple as a README. Basically, you communicate your idea, or you could go extra deep and even demonstrate your API. To what kind of like you don't need to demonstrate what kind of the code you are going to develop and etc. But the major thing is to demonstrate the idea and why the solution is good, is feasible. So this is the kind of a sandbox that what happened in the past. And since this working group is established, and I feel okay, it might be makes more sense to create a formal process. So since it has been working well with MicroProfile dash sandbox, so basically I put in the kind of step in the MicroProfile sandbox, you can demonstrate idea. And what is good is when you create a dedicated repo, and you can migrate what you have put in the sandbox directly to the dedicated repo. So this is as a first start and start a conversation there. And then you follow the kind of the formal process. So do a project creation plan, which is similar to what Jakarta new project creation plan. So basically you do a background scope and also demonstrate the goals and etc. So this is a proposal. I think it's Dimitri has some comments and good feedback. So it's so Dimitri, do you want say anything?
Yeah, I don't really remember what exactly one feedback was, so I'll talk what I remember, right? So first of all, I kind of challenge the idea of sandbox in general, because not every single spec starts with some coding and API, right? So spec may start with some goals and justification, why the spec is needed, what it's supposed to do, what it's not supposed to do. And as the API itself is created then people start working on the spec when it's created, right? So in this case, what sandbox for, right? So I assume that this step may be optional or maybe excluded. If you folks used to that, I'm fine with that. But if there is really nothing to put there, maybe we'll make it optional, right?
It is optional.
Okay.
Yeah, in the past it's optional. The other thing, what I'm saying is you don't need to put a code in. It could be as simple as the README. So basically what you're going to communicate on the mailing list is saying, okay, I'm going to create this new spec and this is a goal.
Okay.
So
fine.
Yeah.
In this case, you need to actually mark that this step is optional somewhere in your spec process, right? The second thing, I was talking about goals, right? Can you please share back?
Yes, sorry, let me just put here before I forget, Mark.
Right.
In the wiki, I believe that it is optional. We just
Yeah,
need to
it
make
wa-
sure to keep that aspect.
Yeah, but if we create in a document about how to create a new spec, right? So it must be marked there, right? So people know. Hey,
Yeah,
this is
I believe it was
optional.
called step 0 and has the title of optional.
Yeah, it's a in the wiki is set optional. However, on the mailing list conversation, people, some people, I think it's there was a recommendation to make it kind of one of the step. So that's why I put in there. If like people, if like we all think it's kind of not necessary, make it optional is fine.
No, one of the things that I see is I understand Dimitri's point about not everything is code. Some other things are may discuss certain goals and they need to be captured somewhere. So I know that the preferred way is to usually use Google Docs, and that's fine. Now, I also sometimes find hard to keep track on all the information, on where all the information is, right? Because some projects have things on the README, some other projects have things on Google Docs. So I wouldn't mind to have this consistent. And I'm not saying that needs to be consistent in a particular way, but I think it needs to be consistent across everything, right? So for instance, if a project doesn't have any code yet and some goals need to be discussed and those goals has to be documented somewhere, that whatever these goals are documented needs to be very visible and very easily findable by anyone.
It could be done in the sandbox.
I fully agree. Not really, because sandbox has full access, right? So
no, it doesn't. I mean, I don't understand when you say full access. It still requires PRs and merging by committer.
Yeah, but someone can easily overwrite stuff, right? So
it's all revision controlled.
Yeah, that's version controlled.
Okay. I was thinking about that. That history is important. It must be there, right? So I totally agree with Roberta that we should keep track of history, right? And what we should actually save is a creation plan, right? So the creation plan needs.
Well, I wanted to make a note on that. There is no phase in the Eclipse specification process called creation plan. Those are two different phases. There's creation review and then plan review.
It's written here, step 2, create project creation plan.
Okay,
I know, but that doesn't exist in the specification process. I'm just saying. There is a creation review, which is one phase in the specification process that happens once. Immediately following your creation review, you need to do a plan review before you start doing real significant work, or at some point you have to do a plan review.
That's a little bit different because in Eclipse, we are creating the specification project and it goes through all their process defined by Eclipse, right? So you create a proposal, this proposal is reviewed, you add committers, blah, blah, blah. So this is quite a long process, takes about a month, right?
Yeah, that's part of the creation review, right? So the creation review is something you do once, and then you do several plan reviews, and you don't skip the plan review. I'm just simply saying there is no plan creation review.
So your comment is about wording mainly.
Excuse me?
Your comment is about wording, right? So change words. So instead of create project.
Yeah, the wording would be, in this case, it would be a creation review because there is no spec project or spec yet.
It's okay. It's okay.
So it would be a creation review. And then for the spec process, you do need to do a plan review before your release review.
So in this step 2 is just a title. If you read the sentence below, it said create an issue under MicroProfile working group with the label plan creation review. Is that's kind of what you are saying, David? So the title I can update it.
It's not the title only. I'm just being clear. We've invented a phase in the specification process that doesn't exist. And we've used it 3 times on this page. There is project creation plan, then there is creation plan template, then there is plan creation review as capital letters, which I would imply are referencing the spec process. And there is no creation plan review or plan creation review in the spec process. There are two separate phases. Does that make sense?
Say the word once more.
Yeah.
What should be is a creation with a project.
It should be creation review. If we're talking about establishing a spec project, it's creation review.
Okay, I will strike the plan just the same creation review.
Right. Now, just to be clear, once you've created the spec project, you still need to go through a plan review before you are eligible to do a release. You can't do a creation review, a whole bunch of work, and then show up with a release review. You can't skip the plan review.
Right. Okay. So basically,
you must get agreement on the actual plan before you can do a release.
Right. Okay. So basically, it's a kind of step 2 can be split into 2 parts. Is creation review and then
plan review.
Plan review. Okay.
Correct.
So can we? Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yep. Just wanted to say maybe we should just take Jakarta process and modify the spec of creating the spec project to what suits MicroProfile. Mean that instead of creating the spec project, create MicroProfile project or whatever, create a spec MicroProfile in a way as described by Evan here. Because Jakarta process is well written, it has all the stuff there already.
Right.
Shall we just take it, modify it if it's needed?
We do, yeah, we can. I mean, well, all of this is defined in the EFSP, right? What we need to be clear about is that we don't actually have spec projects with distinct sets of committers. We have one big MicroProfile committer list, and everybody has access. So we just need to make sure that we're clear what it means in the context of MicroProfile. So in the context of MicroProfile, when someone wants to create a specification effort, right? None of the stuff that we do with the Eclipse process of creating a proposal and establishing committers, none of that happens. We would just be simply creating, a ballot called creation review, and we would say, do we want to have this be a specification under MicroProfile? And we would just basically start at that phase. We wouldn't do all the parts where it would describe the Eclipse proposal, the Eclipse committer list, and none of that would be the case.
Okay, sorry, I think we are at top of the hour, so we need to wrap this up. I think we didn't. I mean, we have some good discussion on this, but I think we are far away from getting this done. Maybe we can do like the same thing we are proposing to do with TCKs, open like a PR with like a proposal and then discuss it there.
So I think, Roberto, because this is already the mailing list on the working group, I will follow up on that email thread, and we'll update step 2 further. And one more thing is, are we making step 1 optional or not? Or
yes,
further?
The fork, yes, optional.
Okay, that's fine. I will modify this one, and then we incorporate all the feedback here, and then so that we'll open up for more comments. Let's move offline. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for joining today, and have some nice videos for the ones that are going on vacation, and if not, see you in a couple of weeks.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
All right.